Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm very excited to bring you a look at the new Marvel Legends Armadillo Build-A-Figure wave, J. Jonah Jameson. For anyone not in the know, this represents J. Jonah Jameson as he appears in the Spider-Man No Way Home and even the very end of Far From Home MCU movies. He is once again played by the incredibly talented J.K. Simmons, one of my favorite actors out there. And he's pretty significant because he is the first character in the MCU to be played by the same actor that portrayed him in a different universe. So I'm not talking about like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, crossing over into the MCU, but he is a different universal variant of Jameson from the one in the Sam Raimi movies. So it is really interesting that they actually got J.K. Simmons to, come back and reprise the role. Now, I'd hoped that meant that he had somehow, crossed over to the same guy, but it's not. Different guy. Instead of running, a traditional newspaper outlet, he runs a website, which is a not-so-subtle dig at the InfoWars program run by Alex Jones, which, just saying that, maybe got my video deranked here on YouTube, but, yeah. I can't say I was a fan of that, very obvious parallel. I don't really want to be reminded of current goings-on when I'm watching Spider-Man, but it's the direction they went with. I mean, I guess it does make it a little more relevant to the times because traditional print newspaper is kind of, going out the door, and online is where people get a lot of their news now. So, in some way, it makes sense. I just wish it would have been handled a little bit differently. And then, unlike his Sam Raimi counterpart, he doesn't have the iconic flat top that Jameson has in the comics. They just left J.K. Simmons' head, just normal, balding. I wish they would have gone with the flat top. I love the flat top, but this is the direction they went with again. And at the end of the day, as long as Simmons is playing him, I don't really care what he looks like, because he is just the perfect casting for that role. I don't know how they're ever going to recast him. Anyway, if you've seen my reviews before, you know this goes. We're going to take a look at Jameson's packaging, then we'll open it up. We'll see the figure itself, including the Build-A-Figure piece, and, we'll get a quick look at that. Then we'll check out J. Jonah's posability, his accessories. We'll be doing some group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So J. Jonah Jameson comes in your standard Marvel Legends packaging. You get your Armadillo BAF call out here. It just says Spider-Man, but it's done up in the font of the MCU / Sony Pictures movies. And the reason it doesn't specify a movie is because he actually appears across two movies, both Far From Home and No Way Home. Now, of course, this is being released to coincide with the release of No Way Home, and he has a much more prominent role in that movie than he does, with his little cameo at a post-credits or mid-credits stinger there. So personally, I consider him from the third movie, but it's really just semantics. You get his name right here, and then you can see the figure. He comes with a normal, just kind of neutral head. He comes with a yelling head, which is very appropriate. And he comes packaged with a closed fist and a accusatory pointing finger, which I think is just perfect for him. Blaming Spider-Man or Peter for something. And then he comes with two open hands. And what's cool is it looks like he even has a ring on that finger. You can see it right here. They actually put a ring on there. And it's on the closed fist one too. I don't know if you can see it from here, but we'll get another chance to see that. So a nice little detail. They made sure to include his ring, which, given that it's on his left hand, it must be a marriage ring of some sort, most likely. And then over here on the side, we get this big old gigantic clawed hand that belongs to Armadillo. Really excited to build that guy. He's going to be cool. On the side, we get it's not really footage, render of footage, I guess, of Jonah on his little, webcast, internet news show. He's, got Spider-Man up here in the corner talking about him, very likely slandering him in some way. And then on the back, we get the same shot, but you can actually see the whole thing now. So it looks like it's on a TV screen. And you get the Daily Bugle, logo here. You get his name. He's sitting in front of his mic with all the papers out. It's really on the nose, guys. I don't like that. Can we keep the real world references, the more politically sensitive references, just add a Spider-Man? Allegory is great. Specific on the nose references to real life people and stuff, it's a superhero flick. I want to watch Spider-Man fight bad guys. Let's not do this. All right, over here we get his name along with some flavor text. And that says, behind the anchor desk on the Daily Bugle website, Jameson does everything he can to sling mud at his greatest adversary, Spider-Man. So I'd say it's a pretty good description of his role in the movies. Down here, we get a render of Armadillo, and then we get our cross-sells for the entire wave. So your integrated suit Spider-Man, black and gold suit Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Jameson here, then Miles Morales Spider-Man, the Vampire Mordoon, and Shriek. So pretty cool. Got a good bit of variety in this wave, aside from the 3 Spider-Men. Okay, so we've seen the packaging. Let's go ahead and open it up. All right, now we get to see JJ out of the box. And first we'll take a look at the Build-A-Figure piece. So this is the left arm of Armadillo. And it's got a universal shoulder peg right here. It's got bicep swivel, single bend elbow, and a universal wrist. And it's really nice. It's a nice piece. Lots of layered parts going on here. The claws are really wicked looking. They look great. And they're not just like generic, sharp claws. If you look at them closely, they're very rough looking. There's a lot of textures like breaking. I mean, heck, this one is kind of splitting right on the tip there. So you can see that these have been used for presumably digging very heavily, which is a nice touch, right? It gives it a sense of realism where they're not these perfectly honed and sharpened claws. They've seen a lot of wear and tear, and I think that's very appropriate. So I think it's a great little piece. Can't wait to build the whole thing. All right, now we can see JJ. Bring him over here. Pretty generic looking, he's a guy in a blue suit with a mustache. Posability's pretty good. He has universal shoulders, though I will say that the shape of the shoulder part and then the jacket here limits the outward motion to about that much. It's just there's not enough clearance to bring it any higher, which is unfortunate. But he does get bicep swivel. He does get double bend elbows, which is nice. Universal wrists, though they can be a little bit hindered by the sleeve there, or the cuff. Now, what's interesting is he has some kind of an ab crunch. You can actually see it right here, but it doesn't move much because he's got this big jacket in the way. So he can bend forward a little and back, but only a little. The head is on a ball joint and hinge combo, so it can look around, up and down. He does have a full waist swivel. He's got universal hips, though they only go out about that far. Thigh swivel, double bend knees, which is nice. And then your standard ankle rock and rotation. Now, I will say he is kind of hard to pose. He's a pretty tall, thin figure, and his feet aren't very big, so you gotta pretty much just pose him in this like perfect upright position. Unfortunately, his toes don't lift up any higher than this, so you can't just bend his knee slightly and bring the toe up. That's as far as they go. So he is fairly limited in how, you can stand him up here, which is, I think, a shame. But he's otherwise, really good and posable. Now, let's look at his different hands. So we get the closed fist, and there's that ring that I mentioned. It's just painted on there. Actually, nope. It's molded. Even better. It is a molded ring. So it's not just some generic hand they painted. That's actually on there. It's got that pointing finger, which I'm going to have a lot of fun with. Just pointing angrily at Spider-Man or Peter Parker. But let's put the open hands on now, just for variety. It's a good attention to detail that the other open hand also possesses the ring. Looks like a standard yellow gold wedding band. Now this one, this one is just a painted detail. It's not actually a raised molded bit, but it's okay. And then of course the head. So this is just a neutral expression, but now we get the angry yelling head, which is so very fitting, and I guarantee this is the one I'm going to be posing him with. Kind of hard to get on there, but it goes. Look at that. Look at that. That doesn't capture the character and the actor perfectly. I don't know what does. He's just behind his desk yelling about that criminal, that scumbag Spider-Man. I love it. He's a very simple figure, very generic looking. Again, he's a guy in a blue suit. But, I mean, it's Jameson. The character, speaks for himself. He's just so much fun that just getting a toy of him is really neat. I don't think we ever got a toy of him. This is not the live-action one, but I'm not even sure we got, the comic or cartoon one either. So, I think this is really cool. I think they captured, the expression and everything perfectly. Now here's a fun little group shot of Jameson pointing out Spider-Man and shouting at him for whatever reason. Maybe he's just spotted him, maybe he's yelling at him for something, maybe he's threatening him. Whatever he's saying, we know it's full of malice and contempt. And this J. Jonah Jameson toy, this thing really works best as kind of an accessory to other figures. Like, by himself, I mean, he's a guy in a suit. You know? I mean, really the coolest thing about him is that he's just an action figure of J.K. Simmons. Like, that's about it. Nothing else that really stands out about him, especially since he doesn't have the flat top, which would have made him more iconic. So he works best as, you know, part of a set piece, you know, as part of some sort of a display or collage or something with Spider-Man, and you just got Jameson, you know, chasing him down, trying to get him in those gotcha moments. So he really is a toy that justifies himself by being part of a greater whole. And this here is a little scene I like to call JJ's worst nightmare. Because what's worse to J. Jonah Jameson than Spider-Man? How about multiple Spider-Men? Imagine the amount of just migraine-inducing stress this guy would have if there were just a bunch of Spider-Men just swinging around New York and just really gumming up this guy's day. And look, I finally found a good use for the open hands. Have him holding his head like he's having some sort of massive migraine or episode or something. It works, it works. I wish I could get him to, you know, kind of bend his legs back a little more, like he's about to drop to his knees, but unfortunately this guy's balance is just terrible. Like, anything other than a straight leg stance is almost impossible to pull off without like some blue tack or a stand or something. And this completes our look at the new J. Jonah Jameson. So, I like this toy, but at the same time, I don't think it's a really great toy. Like, I like it just because I like the character and I like the actor, and getting an action figure that is really cool. But as an action figure, I mean, he's very lackluster. Again, he's a guy in a suit. Like, posability is greatly hindered. His ability to, you know, assume different stances is almost non-existent. Like, he's got the double bend knees and all that, but his ankles don't articulate very well because of his big old, you know, dress shoes he's got on here. And, I mean, anything other than a straight standing position, he just wants to fall over. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he comes with a fair amount of accessories. He has, you know, one optional head and two optional hands. So he's not the skimpiest release out there. But it's hard to get excited over a toy like this. You know, it's Marvel is known for being this kind of bombastic, larger-than-life thing. And this is, you know, kind of the worst version of Jameson they could have gone with, because he's the least out there and least interesting version of the character. You know, I very much preferred Simmons' portrayal in the Sam Raimi trilogy over what we got here, because the one we got here almost feels like a cheap knockoff. I mean, it's great to see him back in the role, and I hope they, you know, utilize him more, and maybe, you know, just kind of nudge him back closer to his roots. Maybe make him get like hair extensions or something. Like, give him the flat top, you know, give him hair replacement surgery. I really want to see something that just makes him feel like something more than like a weird Alex Jones parody, because that's the only vibe I got from the character. And the figure, I mean, it's basically the same thing. It's just an angry, shouting man in a suit. It's not fun. So, yeah, this one is maybe one of the harder figures to recommend. I mean, for completionists out there, big fans of the MCU, big fans of Spider-Man, you know, there's definitely some value there, especially if you're trying to complete the wave and complete the Build-A-Figure. But just as a figure itself, for what he is, I mean, he would otherwise be a hard pass for me. I mean, he's so... I mean, look at him. Just an angry, yelling guy. Like, okay. Doesn't come with, like, any, you know, external accessories. Maybe that would have been cool. Have him hold a newspaper, like the retro version, or something. Because as of right now, it's a pretty boring release. So, I can only recommend this if it's just something you have to have for one reason or another. Of course, that is just my opinion of this toy. Perhaps yours is different. So, let me know. Do you like this figure? Do you think that I'm being a little too hard on it? You think, you know, well, there's worse figures out there. Because, I mean, there are worse figures out there. But, you know, maybe you find more value in this than I do. Or do you dislike it? Do you feel kind of the same way, that it's like, okay, well, it's just some guy, doesn't do anything special. Again, you know, as an action figure, he's not great because he can't do a whole lot of action. Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comment section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the new Marvel Legends Armadillo Wave, J. Jonah Jameson. And with all that said, I will see you next time.